We have quite a few
Wonderful,
participants today.
wonderful, wonderful. Welcome, everyone. I will continue extending my welcomes as more and more people join us in the room. Hello. Wonderful to see all of you, to share this virtual space with everyone. This is just great. Um, we have 29 people in the room, and we have about 1 minute left before we start. So thank you all for joining us. It's great to see you. Great to see you. Hey, Marilyn. Long time no see. It's great to see you again. Okay, do we have Shiv with us? Shiv is here as well. I saw his photo, but Shiv, are you there?
I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Yes, you're there. Wonderful. Welcome, Shiv. It's great to have you with us. And just checking if two other panelists are here. Aram and Mahatma.
Mahatma is here, yes.
Mahatma is there. Wonderful. Welcome. It's wonderful to have you with us.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Wonderful. And is Aram here as well? I don't see him or hear him.
Yeah, he's joining, I think.
Okay, wonderful.
All right. So maybe I could introduce yourself to those who might not be familiar.
Please do.
So today we are very happy because our multi-region coordinator for United Religious Initiatives, Samira, who's been one of the youngest but very long members of URI, who started her services at URI at the age of 13, and she's done wonderfully. And she's one of the most enthusiastic URI members we came across, and we wanted to ask her to please facilitate today's panel discussions and help us with the process. So I'm very happy to pass the facilitation responsibility to Samira for today.
Well, Brother Sagaswamy, thank you so much for your kind introduction. I am very honored to be with all of you today. As I was introduced, my name is Samira, and I'm very happy to be able to facilitate today's conversation. You will not hear a lot from me. We're here to hear from our guest panelists and afterwards to share more of our experiences in the field of today's topic, which is education, which is so important and so huge as a topic. And I hope that we can get more personal experiences through this call today. Just a few technical notices before we start. So in the lower part of your screen, there is the interpretation button that is available on Zoom. So everyone who's comfortable with using English, I would encourage you to click on the language or interpretation, depends on your Zoom, how it's called, button, and select English if you're comfortable with English. I know that we have a lot of Russian speakers on the call as well, and there is the option for you to select Russian if you're more comfortable with that language. I will try to restrain myself and speak as slowly as possible. That's not one of my virtues, but I will give my best. Another very important technical notice is that this call is being recorded by our wonderful hosts, iFast International. This call will be used for purposes of sharing the experience and knowledge from this call. It will not be used for any kind of advertisement or any inappropriate uses, I would say. In case you're not comfortable with your face being recorded, feel free to turn off your cameras. That will be perfectly fine, but it's always wonderful to see as many faces as possible on a Zoom call. We will be spending the next, how long? The next 2 hours together. And the flow of this event will be the spiritual opening that I will ask our brother Saraswamy to do. Afterwards, we will dive into the panel discussion with four of our panelists. And later we will go into breakout session where we will get a chance to meet all of these, some of these wonderful faces that we see on the screen. Afterwards, we will be coming back to the plenary session where we will conclude with the call. Does this sound good? Can I get some reactions on the screen? Is this okay? This sounds good, right? Okay, wonderful. Okay, let's start. So I am very pleased to introduce our first person who will be offering us the blessing. And actually, I'm giving the battalion back to our brother Saraswamy to offer us a bit of spiritual centering before we start with the panel.
Thank you, Samira. You're really doing a wonderful job with facilitating everybody. And so our spiritual opening will be a quote from very ancient scripture, Srimad Bhagavatam, and this is one of the prayers offered by a great saint, boy saint. He was only 5 years old, but he had great compassion, and our Marilyn will be speaking about the role of compassion. So I think it's very appropriate for today's educational topic. So here is the quote in English. Let the auspiciousness prevail in the entire world, with envious becoming fully pacified. Let everybody's focus be on benefiting others and living happily in harmony and peace. When everyone will be absorbed in the supreme transcendence, their minds will calm and the intelligence will be devoid of any selfishness as well. So,
thank you for the spiritual offering, Saraswamy, and well, I have to say amen. There are wonderful benefits of just saying amen after any prayer that we do. Thank you so much. And now I'm happy to shift us into the panel segment of our conversation. And I am happy to start with Dr. Shiv Talwar, which I had the pleasure of meeting when I first started working for URI back in 2019. And allow me to read a little bit from Shiv's biography. There is a lot to be said there, but allow me to read just a short paragraph. Dr. Shiv Talwar is the founder of Spiritual Heritage Education Network, whose goal is to research, develop, deliver, and promote formal and informal education in core spirituality to help turn humanity into a family, living in harmony with each other and with the environment on our planet Earth. He is the author of the book The Common Ground, hailed as a masterpiece on unity of science and spirituality by Books for Peace International Awards. This is just a small segment I have to mention once again, but Shiv, it's wonderful to have you here with us. And I do remember our first conversation about the combination of spirituality and education. So I would like to ask you a question. How did you end up combining science and education and spirituality all together? You have about 3 to 4 minutes for your sort of personal contribution. So I will sort of warn you when you're close to the end of your time in the chat box, so monitor for that as well. You're muted, so you can unmute now, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Am I on?
Yes,
Samira?
we can hear you. Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Samira, for the very gracious introduction and the opportunity that IFAST is offering me to talk about my work. How did I end up combining science and spirituality? Samira's question, I'll start answering that one because that is what I do. I am a technologist. My doctorate is in engineering. So my background is science and technology. That is one part of me. And the other part of me, where I spend all of the time now, is spirituality. So it is natural for me to combine the two. For me, spirituality is not a matter of just believing, it's a matter of seeking. My area of expertise is holistic science and technology. My definition of holistic science is that it is the body of authentic knowledge resulting from the convergence of spiritual science of antiquity with natural science, social sciences, and life sciences of modernity. Science is the body of knowledge about a subject matter, the truth of which has been authenticated with means of validation available to humankind. The means of validation are three in total. One is direct perception by the five external senses, and one internal organ of contemplative perception. The internal organ is our mind and heart combined together that connects with things that are not easily perceptible. Things that are easily perceptible by the external organs of senses like our eyes and ears, um, they, you don't have to use that much of the contemplative effort there. The second means of validation, human reason and logic, and the third means of validation of knowledge is other experts in the field. In matter-related sciences, the subject matter is more easily accessible with the five external organs of direct perception, which can be augmented by empirical measurements, instrumentation, and replication, and replicable experiments on one side, and numbers and mathematics on the other side. In spiritual science, the subject matter may be too subtle to be accessible with external organs of direct perception. Empirical measurements, instrumentation, experiments, number system, or mathematics are also out. They are not applicable there. Authenticity in such cases cannot be mandated by them. We need to rely on direct perception with the internal organs of perception, human reason, formal logic, and replicability of direct perception with contemplative mind by other experts. Technology is the systematic application of scientific knowledge for practical benefit of humanity. Science must precede technology. Technology is based upon scientific truths, whether material or spiritual. Material technology is based upon the truths of material science, while spiritual technology on the truths of spiritual science. Development of technology requires a lot of effort by a lot of developers. Without truth as the basis, its developmental effort cannot be systematized. Whims and beliefs form a very slippery ground for development of technology. Technology based upon material science results in material benefit to humanity. They make life easy and comfortable. To benefit from material technology, the user does not need to know how it works, only how to use it. Technology based upon spiritual science results in spiritual or non-material benefits to humanity. Just like the material technology, to benefit the spirit from spiritual technology, the user should not have to need to know how it works, only how to use it. We understand material benefit, what is spiritual non-material benefit. We lack happiness and we crave for it. That is the biggest non-material benefit that we crave all the time. Happiness does not lie in materiality. We may have everything material, we may yet be unhappy. We may not be materially rich and yet be happy. We soon learn that materiality may be necessary condition for happiness, but it is not sufficient. To ensure happiness, we must meet both the conditions of essentiality and sufficiency. Thus, human happiness requires a balance of both material and spiritual technology. I call the technology of attaining this balance as holistic technology. Holistic technology is based upon holistic science, which is the result of um, mergence of spiritual science with natural, social, and life sciences. Technological application of holistic science can holistically resolve many problems all at once rather than addressing them individually. Holistic technology is the systematic application of holistic science to the benefit of humanity. Systemic education in holistic science can resolve all human and environmental problems of global scale that we are facing today. I hope I did not go too much over the time limit, Samira. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You went over just the appropriate amount. Thank you so much for offering your experience and for the part of the world where I'm coming from, an unusual combination, I would even say. And it was very interesting for me when I met Shiv for the first time when he told me that he has his PhD in engineering, and I was like, okay, and I'm meeting you in this peace building interfaith world. Like, how did you transfer here? So, but I definitely encourage you to explore more of Shiv's work and the book that he wrote, and definitely stay in touch. Shiv, if you'd like to share your contact information in the chat later, feel free to do so as well. And thank you for your contribution. I hope that in the smaller groups, people will have some time to reflect back on a few points that you mentioned. Thank you so much. And now I am very happy to introduce our next guest panelist, Marilyn Turkovic, who is coming to us from Charter for Compassion. And now allow me to read a brief excerpt from her biography. Marilyn is an educator, curriculum writer, instructional designer, grassroots organizer, part of the founding group of Women for Guatemala, and an executive director for Charter for Compassion International. Charter for Compassion has been a partner of URI for years, and that's how I got to know Marilyn for the very first time when I started working for URI. And Marilyn, it's wonderful to have you here because um, I would be very interested to hear what's your personal connection to education, which is a very broad topic, right? And maybe to share a few links from your own work to education as such, and what's the importance of education.
Okay, thank you. My journey has been a little bit different than Shiv's. I went off to college, and I think it was a really turbulent time. And I think it really has helped frame what I had done in education and am doing. It was during the civil rights movement in the United States. And coming from an immigrant family in the United States made me question a great deal. And I think that's really the base of what education is. It's radical. And when I say radical, I mean it gets to the roots. And if one allows oneself to really begin to look around them, they begin to see, what is important and what drives them. So growing up in a bilingual home in what might be called an immigrant ghetto in near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, a steel town, I really got to appreciate the languages that people spoke and the culture that they had. And I think I took that with me as I went off and started to look seriously at education. And I think I've done a little bit of everything in education. I started out as a grade school teacher, went on to be a high school teacher, a principal, a curriculum coordinator, and then went off to university to direct a teacher training program. for future teachers. So the thing that I think is so important in education are a number of things. Number one, we're there as educators and as students to really broaden our perspective consciousness. You know, not everyone thinks about the world as we do. Not everyone reacts to what's going on around them in the same way. And I think it's our responsibility to really help to develop within ourselves and within others how to broaden that perspective. And I think part of that perspective is certainly spirituality. The other thing is that there is another precept in my thinking about education, and that is to really be aware of the world and what's going on within the context of our world. So that, for example, that involves the environment, that involves our social, our civic responsibility, our personal responsibility to our neighbor. So just, I think that awareness is really key in education. Again, you know, you measure that against your own personal beliefs and the development of those beliefs is really an important thing. The third thing I think is awareness of language and the necessity of people naming themselves, the necessity of people holding true to their ethnic roots and to the language that is really a mainstay within their own culture. And then I think the fourth thing is interdependency, and that we are all linked. There's a common humanity. And again, that brings us back to, you know, our spiritual nature. And that it is not only that we are personally linked, we're economically linked, we're linked in all different sorts of ways. And then I think the fifth thing that we want to think about is that if we begin to wrestle, test our perception of ourselves and others in the world, if we begin to look at the world differently, if we are aware of the roots of people's cultures and language, if we understand our common humanity and interdependence, then we have to make a choice. How will we act? Will we act selfishly? Will we act on behalf of our common humanity? And you know, I remember when technology, and maybe I'll leave it with the internet for a minute, when it started to become really prevalent in education. I kept thinking that this is a gateway to something huge, something that will really look at how we can begin to understand one another, how we can meet one another in a session like this, or it will divide us even further because there will be those who will have access to technology and those who don't have access to technology. And, you know, we're seeing that very much in the pandemic, at least in the United States, where, you know, schools were not prepared to offer lessons online. There was not equipment for many hardware for many families and children, so that the divide became even greater. But I think in so many communities, at least around the area in which I live, people became very aware of that lack of hardware, that lack of ability to really use the internet for something other than using Google. So that there is a real interconnectedness between spirituality, technology, and the possibilities of really opening up a gateway where we can understand each other in a much different way. I mean, I'm so excited to see the interpretation facility on this call. And, you know, how does compassion, you know, make its way into all of this? You know, compassion is really discernible action that you act on behalf of others, that you listen, you take direction from other people. The Charter for Compassion is a connector, very much like this call is today. We work with cities who are working at the grassroots level to begin to challenge the issues that make their city an uncomfortable place in which to live. And we work with partners who want to help, not only help locally, but certainly to help globally. So I'm going to leave it there because I have a feeling that maybe it's time for me to stop.
Yeah, thank you, Marilyn. Right on time.
Okay.
I would just like to reflect briefly on a point about every technological development or development in general offers this sort of the unknown sort of terrain for everyone. It's up to us to figure out whether it will be a seed for inequality or it will be a great equalizer for everyone. But it seems that even when we don't think that inequality will sort of reappear, the pandemic has showed us that even in this very sort of progressive age of technology, it is there to point out the great inequalities that the population is unfortunately facing. And I'm really sorry to know that we're not able to use it up to the full potential to offer good quality education for everyone. But let's continue giving our best back to the educational system, both formal and non-formal. And thank you so much for your contribution. At the end, if we have more time, I would like to go back to all of our panelists and ask questions, but that depends on time. But thank you so much for your contribution. I really do appreciate it. And now I am honored to move to our third panelist, a gentleman whose last name I hope I will not mess up, but I've been tutored on how to pronounce it. So with us is Mr. Aram Pakchenan. I hope that was at least close to the correct one.
It was quite close.
Quite close. Okay.
Congratulations. Yeah, you did it very well.
Okay, so I'm getting better at this. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to have you with us. And allow me to introduce you to Mr. Aram by reading a brief segment of his biography, if that's okay. Mr. Aram is from Armenia. He's the director of Abe School, which manifests a new style of educational environment. Abe School is an internationally recognized center for the radical modernization of the educational system in Armenia. Mr. Aram is also a member of the investment committee of the Russian venture company, advisor board of Grantus Ventures, venture capital firm, and he holds a large number of other positions. But it's wonderful to have you here with us on the panel with the topic of education. And I would like to ask you to share your personal story that connects you to the topic of education and sort of your personal and professional growth, and how you came about to start thinking about this radical modernization of education.
My roots in education are coming from my family. Both of my parents were teachers. My mother is still with us, and she's still involved in some way with education. So from the very childhood, I was in the night, I would probably be constantly, overhearing my parents talking about educational aspects up until 2 o'clock in the night. So that passion has probably somehow made an impact on my subconscious. Well, my later career was, my interest was in science, so I went to become a physicist, but never actually became an accomplished, or in any way, physicist. Because at the time I was graduating, my university, it was 1991, and I was in Moscow, and it was the time where Soviet Union collapsed. And there was no science per se at that time in the country. It was kind of fighting consequences of much harder issues than, you know, supporting science or whatever. So most of my friends went into business, and so did I. And the closest that I found to my interests were computers. And it was the time where computers were very romantic. It was a time when computers were for few, and you could do exciting things. It was all just starting. And it was quite interesting, it was quite entertaining. But as I was getting older, I kind of felt that it's a bit, you know, it's not enough, because computers don't have soul. They don't have, I mean, you make software for people, yes, but most of the time, people would not use the software when they are in a mode of accomplishing something important. Well, some do, but most of the time, software is just a very practical thing. It's just another piece in this large machinery of modern society. And the more I was thinking that way, the more I was thinking that there's something else for me in my life that has to be accomplished. Well, part of that is coming probably from my inner, you know, soul talking to me all the time about what is your mission? What is your mission on earth? What do you want to do? Is your mission to earn money by selling software, developing and selling software? Is there something more for you out there? And ultimately, I understood that at some age, you start feeling responsible not only for yourself, and not even for your family, but for a larger yourself, which is your people, your nation, your society, your kind of people, I would say. And by the way, this is something I want to tackle upon just a bit later, but going back to my motivation. And that was not only my kind of wake-up call. Many of my friends, namely we were like 8 people at the time, but we knew much more people that were talking about the same thing. We felt like that our own country, where we all are coming from, Armenia, was suffering a loss of future, a loss of possibility, a loss of belief in future, because future is created at the time of education. Education is the future. It's the machine in a society that designs the future of the society. So if the education is broken, there is no future for the society. And that was a clear message for me, that if I feel responsible for my own people, then the place I should invest myself and my effort is education. And that was it was coming from like the beliefs and idea. But then I found myself later, few years later, well, basically it was quite a few years later. We established a foundation in Armenia in 2006, which was called IPE Foundation. And the goal was to develop education in the country, to help the education become a top-notch, good education that will develop bright people. But then, when we developed our effort to the stage where we were able to open a model school, and we raised funds to build the building for a school, we started to look for the head of a school. And I was very far from being an education person. All of my background was in software development, in software business. but somehow I decided that I'm taking this challenge and I'm turning myself into an educator. And since then, everything in my life has changed. I've moved from Moscow when I lived a very nice life. I was not restricted in whatever you can imagine, to Armenia, that is a developing country. My salary was cut several times. Basically, most of my salary I was returning back to the foundation as my input, as my donations. So basically, my whole effort was to turn from a relatively good business person to a good educator. And I found it to be very challenging. Well, heading a school is probably the most challenging job in the world, especially if you are heading a school towards something. You are not just the head of a school. So you have a goal. Because a school, as we joke sometimes, is a mixture of factory and theater. You have people, and people are important. But then you still have technology behind it. You still machinery that works and should work and should achieve. So this mixture is very hard to manage. You manage talent, you manage people, you manage their growth, their development. And it's a challenging job. And I was pretty bad in that in the beginning. It was very bad. It was terrible. Then I grew to become relatively good head of a school. And very recently, by the way, I was announced to be a head of a school, but actually I left the position in August last year. I kind of transferred the position to another person from our organization that moved the school forward without me, because I felt I don't want to be too long as a head of a school, because probably whatever I could do for the school, I've already done. I need to do something else. So I moved on. Now I'm still involved with IBE effort, and I'm still in the board of the IBE Foundation. I'm a chairman of a board actually, but and I'm teaching in a school. But what I found exciting for me, that I actually love children. I loved my two children, of course, but then I figured, if there is a room and there are people there, I would better talk to children than talk to elderly people or to adults.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm really sad that I have to interrupt you, but we're over time. I would just give you like 30 seconds to wrap up before we move on to the next speaker. Would that be okay?
Well, I basically told the story. It's that. So I'm moving forward. We are doing exciting things in education in Armenia, and we've basically achieved most of what we expected to achieve.
Yes, and that's wonderful to hear you saying that education is not just about running school or preparing like the classes and all of it. It's about a vision that you're transferring over to your students. As someone who's an English teacher by profession, it means a lot to hear that's music to my ears, because that is so important. Sort of the adult education it has like 50% responsibility. 50% is on us as teachers, and then 50% is on our audience. But when we're working with children, with everyone who's not like young adults and adults, the full responsibility is with us. So to create this vision and to give them true leadership means a lot. And thank you so much for sharing that. I hope that you will stay with us until the very end and take part in the group discussions afterwards as well. Thank you again. And now I am humbled to introduce our fourth panelist for today. Mahatma Das is here with us, coming from IFAST International. It is wonderful to have you here. This is the first time that I'm getting to know you, so I'm very honored. Allow me to read a short paragraph from the biography. Mahatma Das is an author, speaker, and a founder of Static Life, an educational organization that helps people apply spiritual principles and practices to daily life. For over 5 decades, Mahatma Das has compassionately helped people solve personal and spiritual challenges. He spoke at such companies as Google, Cisco, Intel, and Volvo, and audiences worldwide. His work is to uplift the consciousness of the planet through awakening spiritual consciousness. Mahatma Das, it's a pleasure to have you here with us, and I would really like to ask you to share a bit of your personal story related to education and the importance of education. So the floor is all yours for next 4 minutes.
Okay. My personal story started in school, which I hated, which is so interesting that I'm so much a teacher by nature, and I so hated school. I found it, I would always sit in class and think, why do I need to know this? And then I was in university, and when Marilyn was speaking, I think we were the same generation. You know, I was in Berkeley, California, in the late 60s. And there was a lot of revolution going on there. And I would always think, what am I doing in school? But I knew by nature, if I stayed in school long enough, I'd probably be a professor, because that was kind of my path, education. But I didn't like school. And I eventually read a book called Bhagavad Gita, and that was kind of my walking papers out of university. I felt this was more relevant, and I began teaching that at the age of 19. And I haven't stopped yet. And I think one of the biggest lessons that I see is that we all have problems. Ignorance is everywhere, right? It's the real pandemic is ignorance. And with one little bit of information, it can solve someone's problem. And when you have that information and you know it will solve problems, what a huge responsibility that is. In the Indian system, when the guru gives you knowledge, you have to give it. It's your responsibility once you get it. You can't get it and keep it for yourself. You have to give it. And it's even said in the Indian scriptures, if you don't give it, that knowledge will leave you. You won't be able to practice it. You won't be able to realize it. So that's been a big inspiration for me. And we always say, if I knew then what I knew now, and I've made so many mistakes in my life that younger people don't have to make, because I already made them. I made the mistakes for them, and I can help them. But I never had somebody in front of me saying, go left, don't go right, don't go left. So that's been my inspiration in education. Okay, I made all the mistakes for you. Now I can tell you, this doesn't work. This ignorance, this is ignorance. And we know in the world today, we're surrounded by so much ignorance, like everywhere. It's insane. And I've seen time and time again, someone is acting wrongly just because they don't know. They're not a bad person. It's just they haven't been informed. This is the better way to do it. And when they're informed, they say, oh yeah, that makes sense. Yes. So that's been my inspiration. And I've kind of developed my education in the last, I developed workshops, and I've developed my workshops the last 15 years or so, just based on the response I'm getting from people of what they're dealing with in their lives. What are the challenges? And I can see the challenges change as society progresses or degresses, depending how you look at it. And so I feel so honored to be able to help people address problems that maybe would take them their whole life to solve, maybe would take them lifetimes to solve. So that's kind of been my direction with education, and just appreciating all the people who have taught me, the indebtedness that I have for all the knowledge I have. So much of it is not mine. So much was given to me. And even when I'm teaching, I'm sure all of you are teachers, you have the same experience. Even when you're teaching, you feel knowledge is being given to you. I do a lot of teaching, and sometimes I have to listen to the recordings of my lectures because I will listen to it as if someone else spoke it. Often it's just coming through me as a gift, and I feel so honored to be able to channel what's given to me. And often my experience, and this is within a spiritual context, that when the student wants to learn, it brings the realization and knowledge out of the heart of the teacher to give it. So when we talk about compassionate education, I see it as education where you really want to help somebody. And in that desire to help them, their need for help empowers you to say things maybe you've never said before on the spot. So I find that one of the beauties of being a teacher, to get that empowerment. Obviously, that's divine empowerment. You're being used to help other people. So that's basically all I wanted to say. That's kind of my journey in education.
Well, thank you for sharing your journey in education and for giving a very sensible definition of what an expert is and what education is supposed to do. That's really wonderful to hear. And when we speak of giving to others and to our community and the society, I have a quick follow-up question for all of our panelists in about a minute. So what would be the gift that we give to others through education? What would be sort of your hope for the future when it comes to education? Can we start from Shiv? What do you hope for? Can you unmute yourself, please? Shiv, sorry. Shiv, can you hear me?
To start with, I would say I would hope for all of us living like one family, and that's what we are. There's only one reality, and we are all from the same reality. So we should look like one family. We should live like one family, love each other like one family. And that is what my hope is for the future of education. And it is very achievable. It is not a pipe dream. It is very achievable. I have been an educator all my life. And now after retirement from my career of teaching technology, I'm devoting full time developing and applying holistic technology to envision mainstream education. I'm talking of mainstream education, changing the educational system of the world. That's what my pipe dream is. And I think it is achievable. It's just a question of getting there. I may not get there, but somebody will.
Well, Shiv, I think that you retired from teaching technology right on time, because I think that we need you in this department a lot. And thank you for giving your energy still back to education and for being with us and for sharing your response to this question. Marilyn, what are your thoughts of the future of the field of education, and what is the gift that we can give to others through education?
I think that I totally agree with everyone else who has spoken, but when you think about the future, I agree with Shiv that we are capable of achieving quite a bit. But, how is it that we can get people to the place of really loving one another and knowing that they are loved, and that we can embrace them and act on their behalf with compassion? And I think that I'm reminded of what the British writer George Orwell said, that we have 2 eyes and 2 ears and 1 mouth, and we should use them accordingly. And I think that will help us on our journey.
Well, thank you, Marilyn, so much. Aram, can I ask you to offer an answer to the same question? So, what is the future of education, and what kind of gift can we give through education to others and to the society? Very briefly, in 1 minute.
I would say that it's important that education finally understands its role, what it does. I believe that education has a principal moral role. It's a moral institution. So education defines how the future society will think, will behave, in terms of its morality and principles. And it's very important that people are educated to understand importance of human qualities and virtues. And education has to be about that. Our key problem now is to prepare people for the best society. The societies are getting challenges mostly around these issues. The kind of human we have is probably not struggling to behave properly in a society. Societies are struggling to embrace people of our kind, and I say largely the current human. The future human has to be better, and the only way to make the human better is to make it more humanly, to make the human carry more of the virtues, spiritual virtues, humanly virtues. And that's what education has to do. It's not at all about knowledge. Knowledge is the least important thing in education. It has to be understood. Yes, gaining knowledge is critical at that age. Children has to gain knowledge, and not only children, students has to gain knowledge because that's what they have to do. But this understanding of importance of doing what you have to do, responsibility, is a critical virtue. And if they're able to understand that, and we are able to transfer that importance of being responsible people, that whatever time they are, whatever they do it with all responsibility against humanity, displaying their virtues, thinking larger than about their ego. That's the right role of education, to my understanding. And the tools and technologies are all secondary. They might be there, might not be there. It's all just a small fragment of the whole concept.
Thank you, Arm, so much. Mahatma Das, can I ask you to offer your contribution to this question as well? What is the future of the field of education? What's the gift that we're giving? Sorry, you're muted. If you can unmute, that would be.
Everything our panelists said is wonderful. And when Arun was speaking, I often think of education as teaching someone how to become humble, because humble is like the pinnacle of virtue. If we can produce humble, as Marilyn is saying, compassionate people, and as Shiva is saying, people that can unite, understanding we're not physical beings, we're spiritual beings, the bodies and the ethnicity and gender is all external. We don't learn that in our education. So we have this problem where we're educating students in a certain way. You can see the trajectory of where how it affects society. And when you change that education, where the emphasis is on personal responsibility, when the emphasis is on compassion, when the emphasis is on integrity, when the emphasis is on humility, when the emphasis is on spiritual realization, then it's naturally going to produce all those results. So, but if we only educate the body and we don't give value to the virtues, to the essence, then we have problems. When I was in university, all I thought about is, who am I and why am I here and who can teach me that? And I couldn't find it. That I was, it's an interesting phenomena. I was in one of the best state universities in America, and I couldn't answer that question. So that's my personal story and perception and personal experience of education.
Well, thank you for wrapping up our conversation in this plenary session with such wonderful reflection. And now I am very excited to tell everyone that we will be hanging out for the next, I'm not sure for how long, I think about 30 minutes in smaller groups, and have conversation about 3 questions that will be given to you by group moderators. Kishori, are we ready to go to smaller groups?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So I believe that one person from IFAST International will be in all of the groups moderating the conversation, right? And we will be coming back to the plenary session again to sort of share the feedback from the individual conversations that were happening in the groups. And I would like to use this opportunity to greet all 61 people on the call that are currently with us. It's wonderful to have all of you. And right now on your screens, you can see the questions that will be discussed in smaller groups. The first question is, why have you decided to join the forum for today's topic, which is education? The second question is, what is your ideal future in this area? And the third question is, what solutions can you suggest to achieve your ideal future? So Kishori, when you're ready to send us off into the groups, I will say goodbye to everyone, and we will be coming back in how long? In 30 minutes?
30 minutes.
In 30 minutes, wonderful. So we have plenty of time for a wonderful, deep conversation. So Kishori, send us off. So welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. We will wait for a few more seconds just to see that everyone is successfully found their way back. The number
We have 3 rooms that are so much enjoying their conversations that apparently they don't want to go back.
No one wants to come back. Well, I promise this will be just an extension of the conversation in the smaller groups. Hi everyone. Wonderful to have you back with us.
Hello, welcome back.
Yeah, everyone's smiling, so that's good. This means that the conversation in the groups was productive, very positive, inspiring. I can definitely say that that was the kind of conversation that we had in my group. Thank you all for taking part in this segment of the call. One of the very important things is that it's wonderful to have a large crowd of people on Zooms, even on meetings in person, but the personal connection and face-to-face conversation that we have is very important, and we should not overlook that ever, no matter what we do, because these conversations are truly life-changing, and I know that they were for me. So thank you all for being so active in the groups, and I hope that everyone from the groups selected someone to present them back in the plenary session. So I would ask someone to volunteer and report back of what have been the great contributions of your group to the topic of education. Do I have any volunteers? Volunteers? Okay, I see Deepak Naik has raised his hand. Deepak, please go ahead. Just unmute yourself.
Only to try and get things going. And
wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for hosting this conference and activity. I'm sorry, but I didn't get the names of everyone that was in our workshop. So my apologies. But we had 4 people in our group, and when you start the workshop, you think, how are you going to have 4 people talking about this conference, about this topic for such a long time and everything? But actually, it was a very short period of time, even when you got 4 people. So you can see the depth of quality of conversation and reflection that we had. It was quite beautiful and intensive. So in terms of the reason for us to be part of this particular activity and to reflect on why is it important for us as education, this workshop. So the kind of responses that we had was that some of our participants were teachers and tutors. Some people, such as myself, have become a grandparent, and so it's important about how I communicate, how I teach and learn with my grandchild, but also with the work that I do with communities, so that was a kind of range of the rationale behind our motivation to be part of the workshop. And why is it important? It was, I think, had a collective consciousness to say education is important and learning is as equally important and teaching is as equally important, because each one of us teaches and learns throughout our lives. You know, at some point we are, with some situations, in some circumstances, we are teaching, and in others we are learning. And we should be aware of the difference and taking the opportunities in our lives to be aware of that, and then take that fully on board. And with that in mindset is also to understand that how the teaching of today is driven by the notion of economics and career progression and business entrepreneurship and making money. And people like me, I mean, we accept that that's necessary, important, but that's not exclusive. That's not the only thing. And in reality, it's a very small thing, really. It's actually, how do we enrich our lives? How do we discover and explore the opportunity of being one with nature, one with the environment, one with each other, with other people who are different to ourselves, and learning from them, acquiring knowledge and wisdom from them. So that enriches our lives, my life. And then how we can try and embed that within education systems, whether that's statutory or informal, so that we can try and help the transformation of society, so that we become less conscious and motivated by money and wealth and however that manifests itself, but much more about how we live our life and how we connect with the sacred. So it was a whole range of conversations that touched upon all of these different elements, is what we had in our small working group, and it was quite beautiful to be part of that group. So I say thank you to my friends who were part of the working group. I hope that I've reflected the contribution fairly. Forgive me if I haven't. Thank you.
I believe you did a wonderful job, Deepak. Thank you so much for breaking the ice and speaking out first with your report from the group. It's interesting to know that there was a lot of overlap between what was discussed in my group and in your group, and I think that we're on a good track of sort of fortifying these very important ideas and notions. Thank you so much. And I'm now looking for a second volunteer who will report back from their group. Briefly, in a few sentences, just give us the sense of what you talked about in the group. Volunteer number.
Salika has raised her hand.
Sorry?
Salika has raised his hand.
Well, Salika, welcome. You're next. Please unmute yourself and give us the report back. What have you discussed in your group? It's wonderful to see you.
Thank you very much, Samira. It's a pleasure being here. I'm happy to see this family. Actually, I'm so elated. In my group, we have four people. We have four of us. We have Vladimir, we have Gulnara, we have Baki. Two ladies and two gentlemen are there. Four of us were there together. And on the topic, the first topic we were looking at why we all are particularly here in this particular topic of these days of different topics. The general perception of everyone was that there is a lot of gap in between what education should be and what education is in today's world. So having a need to contribute to the need to have the right kind of education. So that was the motivation for practically all of us for joining this particular session. And on the second topic, on the second question, in summary, what we all looked at was that basically present system of education is focused on materialism. And because there is an imbalance when there is only material education, because there is the living entities are just basically spiritual and material. So there's a wide gap of lack of spiritual education. So everyone agrees that there is a need to have simultaneously a spiritual system of education where it will be balanced, material and spiritual education. That was the focus of our discussion on that second topic. And in looking at the future of what education should be, teaching should be in the future, it was all agreed by the 4 participants in that group that if there is a way that a system of spiritual education could be introduced formally into system of education worldwide, it will be a very greater help in solving most of the world's problems. And one of the participants was very emphatic about the need to have the importance of physical education, because the world, due to the pandemic that has erupted the world in the last 1 year, it's like education teachings is now being focused on online, and he's saying that if care is not taken, it might become the norms, but there is a very strong need to always have physical teaching, so that in the euphoria of taking the internet education or online education, that we forget the importance of physical teachings and education, because it transfers values. I think in summary, this is what we discussed in our group.
That was a wonderful summary, Salika. Thank you so much for sharing that. And we did identify a lot of same points, especially the gap between what we want it to be and what it is now. But we're sort of heading there, so that's a positive thing, I feel. Thank you for volunteering. The third volunteer will be Natalia. Go ahead.
Thank you for this opportunity. We had a really wonderful group. We had 7 participants, and Rasayan Sagar Maharaj, Marlene, and Rick, and maybe I will not remember everybody, but it was really amazing conversation. It also touched the same points that the spiritual education is not enough in the system which is right now in the world. And also Sagar Maharaj also gave a very interesting offer to share gifts and to accept gifts and to share what could we do for each other. So like I said like about our course, and right away like we connected with Marlene, maybe we can do something together in the future. So it's really wonderful, because like here we see like-minded people who really can bring something really very, very essential to people's life and their education. So if we can work together, we can get more power. And I'm very grateful for this opportunity in our session.
Well, thank you for sharing the reflection back from your group. I am looking for volunteer number 4. I would really like to hear, okay, so I see a raised hand from Patri. Patri Dasa, where are you? Feel free to unmute yourself. You're there. Wonderful. Unmute yourself and share with us the reflection from your group.
Thank you very much. And just very briefly, I'll just mention that it was very, very exciting discussion. And topics were how to bring education frontline to bring qualities in people. So information was transformation in the heart, because when leaders or teachers, they're not following what they're teaching, it doesn't make any sense, basically. Practiced by the teachers is a very, very important step in education. So what they're teaching, they have to, action speaks more loudly, because when teachers, they're not following what they're teaching, students usually never taking it in their life. And the relationship between the seniors, leaders, also very much great tool for education, because people whom we are teaching, they can see how we're implementing the science in our own lives and in our relationships. And at the end, if people not happy, what is the use of this education which doesn't make people happy? And we were also discussing the thing that no wind will be favorable for us unless we know which direction we are sailing our ship. So we have to understand the basic foundation of education, which is A, B, C, D of human life, which is A, aim, B, behavior, C, character, and D, discipline. So without understanding the aim of human life, well, we can talk big talks, and we have to understand what is the truth of life, basically, ultimately. Because I see, as we said, it was discussed that as a lady cannot become half pregnant, as a man cannot become half dead, so truth cannot become half. It's truth or this is lying. So education means to make people to open their hearts to the reality and open their mind like parachute working when it's open, and we have to work together. And leadership means when generations of students will see how leaders cooperating together, leaders. So we even discussed, okay, let's meet in our respective places. Okay, Malika Mala invited us to Kazakhstan, Almaty. We invited everyone to Nepal to come. And we're going to have next meeting, we decided very soon together in our group. Somewhere, if lockdown is not there, we'll be in Nepal, in Kazakhstan, or in Zoom. So how we are following our relationships like that. So that's very important to establish loving relationships and learn the language of love. Information comes later. Thank you very much.
I agree. And yesterday we spoke about community building. I think that in the reforms that we want to see through our education, that need to go through our education, the community is one of the keys for bringing these changes further. And I know that IFAST International has a wonderful community all over the world. So you have that going already. Thank you so much for sharing.
Come together. One thing I forgot, to come together to the ground. You see, head in the sky, very nice, but to keep legs on the ground is very important. To come to the Mother Earth and to learn how to work on the Mother Earth, use what you can produce what you need. So like that, to work together and educate people how to become down to the earth.
I agree with that. That's a wonderful feedback. Thank you so much. It seems that you were very busy in all of your groups. That really makes me happy. Do I have any other groups? I know that I have 3 more plus mine, but I would really appreciate to hear back from each of the groups. All of your reflections and contributions are so important, and I would like for everyone to be able to hear them. Other groups? I don't see any hands raised. Volunteers? Anyone? Okay, that's fine. Not everyone has to share. That's perfectly fine. Allow me to share a few reflections from the group where I was. They decided that I'm going to be their spokesperson in addition to moderating the panel discussion. It's okay. I accepted that graciously. We talked about education needing to change the culture and the power of education being enough to change so many different things. And one of them is the culture in which we live in. We should use the internal senses just like our outside senses to learn about the world and our position in the world and the ultimate truth necessarily. Education is there not just for us to gain knowledge that will help us in earning money and a stable living, but help us orient ourselves to others, to the world, to the earth, and everywhere around. It is sort of an overwhelming education rather than just focused on material values of this world. One of the things that education should teach us is positive behavior, good behavior, values, and virtues that we need to have. Spiritual education is something that should start from early on, working with children, especially as children seek not just knowledge about physical manifestations in this world, but they want to be taught a lesson of kindness and compassion and sensitivity, and all of these wonderful respect virtues that we need to have in life. We need to be curious when it comes to education. A lot of curiosity is good, and seeking the truth and not trusting everyone who's in charge of our education, and sort of having healthy skepticism of everything that we hear. And dialogue was one of the key words that we mentioned, and there needs to be dialogue between individuals, dialogue between groups, dialogue between spirituality, science, education, dialogue between formal and informal styles of education. And without a healthy dialogue, we cannot set up healthy roots for anything to grow. So having a meaningful conversation seems to be a great start. Just like we had today, this was a very, very meaningful conversation that I deeply enjoyed. And working in URI and being positioned where I am, these conversations happen all the time. And I do encourage all of you to stay in touch. And right now, this is a great place for all of us who would like to share your email addresses, names of your organizations, to link them in the chat box so that people can stay in touch. I will leave my email address as well if anyone would like to stay in touch with URI. I see a lot of URI people already here and a lot of people from different CCs, so that's really wonderful. One of the blessings of being interconnected into this network is that you can reach far and beyond to everyone in this world when you are connected in some way. And this is the purpose of URI. And I can see that Anna from IFAST has raised her hand. Anna, you want to go next?
Thank you so much. Yeah, I was just designated by Morgana, who we had in our group as well, in a small group. So I will say a few words. We had 5 women in our group, and the discussion was very interesting in terms of technologies that we could potentially implement. What was said was the importance of traveling, importance of learning about the world by communicating with different faiths, different religions, opening up the horizons at the younger age versus doing it or trying to do it when you have a career or children or later on. So that's a part of education. Also, how we don't have a culture in education that incorporates the teachings of love. It's kind of like transitioned as a sentiment for maybe younger children, but this is something that every human being needs to learn in the core. So teaching how to love is not just a sentiment for somebody who is an engineer or somebody who is in any technology or somebody who is in any other field. Is as important as if that person was 5 years old and still dependent on younger education. So that's also important. Also, the importance of stories. Our formal education consists mostly of when you go to university or when you're in the later classes of grades of school, you're given textbooks and kind of learn it yourself kind of thing. So what was said was also very important to hear the stories from teachers or from somebody who you hold as authority or somebody who is interesting to you. So probably somebody older. And listening to the stories, we don't really have that as a part of our formal education as means of learning. But then hearing the stories and getting the idea of through the hearing, right? Engaging, and you think it's just only one sense, but in reality, when you hear the story, it's also your imagination, it's also the feelings, it's emotions, it's the communication. So the person is learning a lot more through those means than just reading a book or watching a video. So this is the brief summary of what we discussed.
Thank you for this overview, and Morgana, thank you for delegating responsibilities. Morgana is a friend of mine and a URI trustee for multi-region. So thank you for your contribution in that way. Anna, thank you for presenting what you said in the group. It was really important to hear back from as many groups as possible. And I think that there are just 2 groups left that haven't spoken. You don't have to, that's perfectly fine. We would love to hear back from you. But if there is no one who would like to present, we're not forcing anyone to do that. I see that Marilyn wrote us in the chat that she has to leave. Marilyn, if you already left, thank you for being a part of this conversation. And we will see Marilyn in one of the future days as well. She will be back as a guest panelist again. I can see that Brother Sargoswami raised his hand. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I was just thinking that in our group, for example, we had so many brilliant educators, and there is so much need for systematic education in spiritual values and traditions, which is so much lacking in in current times, because secular education is not really presenting traditions properly, and they should be presented by the practitioners. And I was thinking that if we help each other to enter into the mainstream education, one way or the other, help each other to succeed, that would be greatest outcome, greatest gift, not just for us, but for the world, because there are so many amazing teachers in here. And so everyone has tremendous potential. And all this, energy has to be directed into the mainstream education. And if we could all think about how to do that, that would create real transformation on the planet.
I agree with what you're saying. And at one point in life, every individual, I believe, will be in the situation to be a teacher for someone. Maybe not in the full capacity of being a teacher and having a lecture plan and delivering a great speech, but at one point, we will have the opportunity to engage in educational process with someone. And it's up to us to be prepared at all times and to know what kind of values we're bringing to the table and what's important and what do we want the world to know about us and our values through what we say and what we do. That's one of the great messages from the group discussions as well. And we're getting closer to the end of the call. We have about 5 minutes left. So I would, if there are no other reflections from the groups, I would like to ask two people on the call who are with us for the first time, maybe, to share your reflection of this experience today. How was this call for you? Will you be coming back tomorrow to join us again? Can I get to Sergi? I'm so sorry, I cannot pronounce the name properly.
Yeah, you were very close for
okay.
this name. Sorry.
Go ahead,
Sorry.
please.
Yeah, I'm my first time here. It was nice to meet here people from different countries, which we have. The first thing I noticed that Aram, we have common people which we know together, and it was nice to meet him on this meeting as well. I really appreciated to be here because I'm working in education business. I have a little computer science school for the children in Russia, so it was very important for me to share and get some ideas about education of the future. And as well, I found that the thing that my decision, which I've made just a couple months ago, to move from other business area to education area, it's completely, how to say it, fundamental and a good decision to have. And I see this meeting for me that I was surprised to come. It's very, how to say, then the it's kind of destiny for me. I mean, then you start to do your destination, to do your ikigai, Japanese term. The world supports you and give you opportunities which shows you your path to reach your goals on your path. So that's it.
That's
And
great. That's really great.
that-
Sorry.
and thank you for your moderation of this conversation. You do really well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And I have to congratulate you. It takes a lot of courage in the middle of COVID to change your profession and to go into education and start all of this. So congratulations on doing that. I encourage everyone as who is on the call to join us tomorrow again at the same time for another panel discussion concerning peace and conflict transformation. I'm definitely looking forward to that panel tomorrow. I will be one of the panelists, so I will be taking a different role tomorrow. And it has been my pleasure to be in charge of the flow of this journey of ours. And I'm deeply grateful to our panelists who gave incredible contributions to our session today, and to all of you who took active participation through the chat, through the breakout session in smaller groups. So all of your efforts are deeply appreciated. And I am thankful to IFAST for giving me this pleasure of moderating the call today. Brother Sargoswamy, do you have anything to conclude with, or should we say goodbye to everyone right now?
Yeah, we are looking forward to see everyone tomorrow, because tomorrow's topic on conflict transformation is really important. And we hope that everyone's interested to take part in it and contribute to it. So, and many thanks for everyone's participation. And of course, special thanks to our Samira. I think we should all give her standing ovation for brilliant facilitation. Thank you, Samira.
Yeah.
Thank you.
For sure.
I deeply appreciate
Indeed.
that.
Thank you so much, really.
Thanks. I'm gonna get a little blush in my cheeks. Thank you so much. I appreciate this work, as I am aware that facilitation is one of the most important parts of my job, and I love doing what I do. So thank you for this opportunity. And I'm looking forward to seeing all of you again tomorrow. Bring the best of your energy and your inspiration and motivation to the call tomorrow, and we'll continue having these important conversations. Enjoy the rest of your days and talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Samira. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Looking
See
forward
you
to see you
tomorrow.
tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone. See you tomorrow.
Bye, Morgana. See you.
Bye.
Thank you, Morgana.